Oh gosh.
All right. Are we live? Yes, we're live. All right.
Yay.
Hello,
Hey.
everybody.
Woo, hello.
Dang, we do have a lot of comments. Cool. I haven't looked through them yet, but I will look through them a little bit later. Welcome, everybody. So has everybody finished the book? I hope. And general thoughts and feelings, would love to know. Exclamation points, question marks, whatever.
Jade
So-
said she finished 30 minutes ago.
Nice.
Nice.
did?
Good timing.
Who said
Call me
that?
Kristen.
Bedtime bookworm.
Oh, cool. Good
Excellent.
job, girl. All right. So we're looking at a little bit longer show tonight because it's the finale and we have lots to talk about. So maybe closer to 2 hours is kind of what we're thinking. And I just wanted to thank a few people before we get going. I wanted to thank Jai from the Facebook group. And there's so many people who are talking in there, but I meant to mention Jai last week and I didn't. I'm sorry about that. So thank you so much for your comments in the Facebook group, and thank you to everybody who's been commenting in the group and also in Leslie's and Michael's Discords. It's been really fun. We're having some great conversations in there. I forgot to link the Discords below before starting the live stream, but I will do that afterwards so you guys can join it if you want. And there's also some playlists of Stormalong 2020 videos, all about the Stormlight archives in the description, and the schedule for Way of Kings and Words of Radiance. And I have Oathbringer now, so I'm going to make the schedule for that very soon as well. So let's see. Okay, so for tonight, we're going to do the discussion question thing again. And then we'll have an open mic at the end. But I don't want to discourage anybody from just sharing their thoughts. We're really here to hear from you guys. So if there's anything you want to talk about, just like go for it. We're happy to hear from you. So, but I just have the open mic at the end, so it doesn't get too crazy. Then it's easier to kind of sort out comments to highlight and stuff like that. But please feel free to say what you're here to say. We want it to be fun for everybody. All right. So I guess we can start with the first question if you guys are ready for that.
Sounds good.
All right. So did you get hooked into the Sanderlanche at the end? And when did that hook happen for you? Because I don't know if it happens at different places for everybody, but I'm just curious. Did it happen and when?
Victoria, go.
Okay. For me, it was probably when the moment that Sadeas betrays Dalinar, we find out that he's leaving, he's retreating the war. That part was when I was like, what? And I was like, I have to just keep reading till it's over now. That was kind of like the point of no return for me. Even though like it was one of those plot lines that I kind of saw coming. I was like, okay, something's gonna happen with Sadeas. Like he can't be just best friends with Dalinar all of a sudden. I kind of felt like something was gonna happen, but for some reason it still surprised me. I think just in the way it was written, I was still like, what?
Yeah, I would say probably the same.
That was a big moment.
Victoria, right when you knew that all the bridges were being pulled back from Dalinar's plains. Like you knew at that point that's like, oh man, like Kaladin's gonna have to. Like he would never say he would, but he wants to be honorable inside, and that was just kind of an inevitable conclusion that he was gonna have to go back.
Right.
And kind of the same. I think it was the last 170 pages for me. I read in one sitting. I think I stayed up till 2:30 in the morning, which I never do. I'm not Kristen. I don't stay up all night reading. I'm in bed by 10. But yeah, for me that was where things just started getting so hectic and awesome.
Yeah. Definitely.
Victoria, you said you didn't really trust Sadeas. What about you, Ryan?
I never really did either, but he started to convince me a little bit when Kim and Dalinar did start to become friends. But I think part of it was because of that stupid vision down our head where it said trust Sadeas, and then we found out no, we weren't supposed to. I fell for it just like Dalinar did.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a Sanderson twist. Give some guy a prophetic vision that he totally misinterprets.
Yeah. It's going to make it so that Words of Radiance, I'm not going to believe like anything anyone says.
Yeah, not for a while, not till the end.
Yeah. And then, of course, all the crazy twists at the end, too. I mean, that in and of itself would have been a crazy twist, but then everything Shallan and Yasna find out, and then what Dalinar finds out in his last vision, and then the epilogue, it's like Sanderson's like, nope, here's another one, here's another one, here's another one, here's another one, and just blows your mind out of the water.
Yeah, I just loved how the book ends with the epilogue, and I love that Wit gets the last words too, and that we kind of leave off on like on his commentary. I thought that was a really just impactful and kind of ominous way to end just in general. I really enjoyed that.
Yes.
Christy and Michael, do you remember what, like, the first time you read it? What was the point for you where you were not able to put it down?
I was pretty hooked at the moment when Dalvani sailed. That was my moment. I was like, yes, I'm into this.
What about you, Michael?
So for me, it was kind of this. I was really into it, but the part that I couldn't stop reading was basically the same moment that you guys mentioned. Like, as soon as they mentioned that they were going to do the joint assault and it was going to get everybody there, I was completely bought. I was like, oh, this is where it's either going to go. I had completely trusted Sadeas like a schmuck, and I was ready to go. And then when they got there, and Kayla mentioned it in the chat, it's not just a betrayal. It is cold what he does. I was trying to explain it to Amanda when we were reading. I was trying to like, here's their army. They're supposed to kind of come together and crush the bad guys, but they're kind of surrounded on both sides. And then I was like, then they left, and now they're surrounded on three sides.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man.
And then Sadeas' freaking argument at the end where he's like, oh yeah, I did it because, if you would have died, it would have brought all of us together.
It's like, oh, dude.
Yeah, it's interesting how he justifies it. I always like it when we see villains justify their actions, and we see like how they feel like they are doing the right thing when it's, obviously not perceived that way to us, but they feel like they are doing what they need to do for the kingdom or whatever. So
right.
I always enjoy that.
And Dalinar says as much. He's like, any of the other high princes would have done the exact same thing. And if I go to war against Sadeas now, I can't take revenge against him. It just won't go well for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That comment that's on the screen right now. Oh man, so many good moments there.
Yeah. At that moment, and Kristen would tell you this if she's here. She's hoping to join in a little bit. She basically did the same thing I did, read the last 200 pages in one sitting, but she did it the night before I did. So I was just kind of like sitting there staring at her reading the book.
I was just watching her emote excitedly.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
At one point, it was at that point where Dalinar buys the bridgment. Kristen just got up. He's like, I have to leave because if you see what's going on in my face right now, like I might spoil something.
Love it.
We cannot wait for Kristen to join us.
And then she broke the rules and started Words of Radiance instantly as 180 pages in.
That Kristen, we cannot control her. She's a free agent.
She is a free agent. But I'm glad because she loves the story so much. I tried to get her into Mistborn for a long time. She's about 100 pages in. And she was kind of like me. She didn't really get into it at first, and then it grew on me, and it's growing on her. And it was kind of a struggle to get her to read Way of Kings at first, but now she's like absolutely in love with Stormlight Archive. So it's for me.
Yay! That's awesome.
Radiance is a big win.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. Alrighty. You guys are sharing a lot of favorite moments, which is really cool. That's actually like a question that I had. Oh, that's the next question. I'll just put it up. Share with all your favorite things. All the favorite things. I want to hear them.
Go ahead, Ryan. Take it away.
Oh man. Well, I was foolish and said that I didn't like the first like 20 chapters, so I feel like everything I said at the beginning is no longer valid because the ending totally makes up for it. I mean, I just have to go with the end. The scene where Dalinar trades his Shardblade to Sadeas for all the Bridgemen. It's like that's like the theme of the story, just being punching you in the face, but not in like an overly like expositionary way. It's in the truly the best thematic way possible. It's you have the one character Kaladin who says no light eyes can ever be honorable, and then you have Dalinar who is trying so hard, and then when those two unstoppable forces clash in the middle, and Kaladin sees that yes, it is possible, and his whole worldview is rocked and changed. Like that, I love a lot of stories. I love Lord of the Rings. I love Narnia. Love Harry Potter. There's so many good stories out there, but I'm struggling even finding a scene in those stories that mimic that one is the epic thematic element.
Yeah, it's an impactful moment for sure. I feel like that moment, if you were on the fence about Dalinar, like whether or not you liked him, I feel like that's the moment that you're like, I like him. This is like the sacrificial quality that he has. Like he's just willing to sacrifice himself. He's willing to do the right thing no matter what. And that was really the moment that I was like, that, and then Dalinar like beating up Elokar was also my favorite. I was like, yeah, he's awesome. Dalinar is my favorite now.
Yeah.
And he's
I'm going to kick your butt and I'm going to start dating your mother.
Yeah, he's like, and I'm dating your mom.
By the way.
So get over it. It's a great. What I was going to ask you guys, what did you guys think about when Dalinar, he totally switched from we're going to just model goodness to everybody so that they learn from us to be good to nope, we're going to totally enforce it on them because they're children. Like, what did you think about that switch? If you had any thoughts. I thought that was crazy. That's like a total schema shift. A different way of ruling entirely.
It looks like you have a thought, Michael.
I'm trying to think about like what the first time that I read through that. It's like it's accounting for the human nature, right? Because we want to say that if you just show that something is better, that people will be better. But I think that anytime you look at the real world, that not never, but very rarely happens to be the case. So when Dalinar is like, listen, if you thought I was trying to kill you, I could have killed you now. We need to start having everybody shape up. It's like, yeah, you have to account for the fact that people are going to be selfish and they're going to be stuck in their ways. And you are inviting a whole additional level of danger on yourself, which he realizes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is a very like full paradigm shift of his methods.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was the point of Dalinar being a little bit more passive in what was going on to the point of him being like stepping up and being a leader. Because being a leader, you have to make hard decisions. And sometimes you like as a leader, you have to go even against your own nature to see like what's best for the people that you're leading, even if it's something that, like maybe you're not comfortable putting yourself out there, but you have to because you're the leader. I felt like that was maybe the moment for Dalinar where he's just like, you know what, forget this. We're just gonna lead.
Dalinar and Kaladin both sort of like embody the principle that Lirin had told them in Kaladin's flashback. The like someone has to start doing what's right because it's right, and they both kind of sort of have that turn at the end where Dalinar says, I have to do this, even though it seems like it's insane according to my culture. And then obviously Kaladin does what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And also the kind of I guess paradox of Dalinar, he's trying to embrace peace, but in the end he does get what he wants in becoming the High Prince of War, because he knows that controlling the war will be the only way to bring peace, at least in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the most opportunity with videos probably to talk about the stuff that I like, so I don't want to take too much time. But I forgot about one of the like best scenes that I thought in the book, which is the conversation that Dalinar and Kaladin have kind of after they've already made their initial arrangement. And the like question where Dalinar's like, listen, Kaladin, I need to know, why did you decide to come back? And Kaladin's answer is just, why did you decide to buy us? And they don't answer the question. They understand because it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that moment is so good. It's so good.
So good.
Man.
And just that word priceless, you know, he basically says,
Yeah.
well, how much is a shard blade? Priceless. How much are these humans' lives? Priceless. Like, I made an even swap.
Yeah, he says I got a good deal, I think. 'cause he
Yeah,
got a bunch of lives.
Yeah, that just really shows his heart. And I think just his heart for people and his heart for humanity.
Which makes me really want to read Oathbringer now, because I'm wondering where Dalinar came from to bring him to this point.
We have so many pages to read before Oathbringer.
I know.
They'll go fast, or you'll want them to go fast.
Yeah, I'm sure Chris will be done in a week.
Yeah. Oh man.
I know you guys are gonna be like, why did we give 2 months to Words of Radiance? Only needed
It is longer. Yeah, it is
much
longer.
less.
It's good to
Okay.
digest it.
Good. Yes.
Victoria, can you show your book, all your tabs?
Oh, sure. It's a bit of a hodgepodge of colors.
It's amazing.
It's so beautiful.
I think I'm going to change my system and only have like 3 colors instead of 7 going forward, just because it was pretty time consuming. And I think I won't want to be reading slowly for Words of Radiance. So I think I'll want to be going a little quicker. So yeah, we're going to revamp that a little bit.
Nice. That's still
Yeah, I'm
impressive.
curious if anybody.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. Well, I was just gonna ask. Did anybody else in the comments like make annotations or take notes or anything like that? And what were you gonna say, Ryan?
Oh, I was just commending Victoria and how epic it is.
I'm trying to decide
Yes,
if I'm
you're
going to
good.
leave them there or not, or if I want to like take them out. I don't
Leave
know. If I
them.
reread it, I might get annoyed by them.
Well, here's the
But
thing
I don't
that
know.
Kristen found interesting, because I had read most of, like 80% of the book before she had caught up with me. So she found it interesting reading it the first time to see what I had marked. And she said, now it's
Oh,
really
yeah.
weird now that she's ahead of me, not having that to look at.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So maybe when Julio reads it, he'll want to see what you marked.
Yeah, someday. I'll leave them for now.
Mm-hmm.
Where we were talking about favorite moments. Yeah, I wanted to talk about one of my favorites was Hoyd and Kaladin, or Wit and Kaladin talking.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was just such a visually interesting scene, because it just, in my mind, I could picture just the whole story, just kind of like scene by scene. It was such an interesting, I thought, way to tell the story, and with him playing the flute, because I have a thing about playing the flute, so that was fun for me too. And then just that whole interaction also, and what Kaladin kind of takes from that, and that he takes from that like the responsibility that he's carrying, that he kind of like knows he's carrying but doesn't really like consciously grapple with and deal with, and how that story kind of made him go like, oh, I have this burden on me that I'm also like making excuses for myself that I need to carry this burden, and he's just like taking it on. I know, Christy, I think I saw you had a question kind of about that scene. Like,
Yeah, I didn't really get exactly what was happening. Like in like 1 or 2 lines, I just couldn't understand exactly what schema shift. I know that previously he was. I never felt like he was exactly making excuses to quit, but I just felt like he felt like the world was against him and there was no way that he could succeed. And I don't necessarily think that changed in that scene, because he still was like, well,
yeah,
it's
not
my
in that
plan,
scene.
it's
I
obviously.
agree.
So yeah, I don't really know exactly what changed, but clearly something changed for him, because he acted differently after that. Was it right after that he accepted his radiant hood and talked to Tef, or was that?
It's in the same chapter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
so
it's in the same chapter.
It's when
So-
he says that I'm not cursed anymore. And he says, I'm going to use whatever I have to do, what I want to do.
Isn't that pretty much where he was before he became a slave?
I think this may be just my interpretation, but to me, I see it as a little bit of like a realistic portrayal of 2 steps forward, 1 step back for a lot of Kaladin's journey, to where he gets some inspiration, he decides to take some action, and then crap goes really bad, and then he gets a little further, and sometimes he slides further back than, he never gets suicidal again. But I feel like it's a lot of push and pull where it's a realistic journey, I think, of how people actually change, which is less of a snap and more of a gradual shift.
It's more realistic.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like that scene got him at least thinking about what was going on with his guilt. And at least had him, it kind of like planted the seed with, do I need to torture myself all the time? You know?
Yeah, that's definitely a change that he made, because before he felt like it was all his responsibility, all on him, and if there was any failure, it was his fault. So I could see that was definitely a change that he made. So maybe that was the main thing for that scene.
Well, I feel like that's part of the beauties of Sanderson's longer works, and I'll be the first to say that there's a lot in this book that maybe doesn't have to be. There's just a lot of detail there. But in a shorter book, you would almost have to make Kaladin make the snap changes right then and there. But in a longer book, you have time for him to process like an actual human would in real life and give that gradual change, time to reflect, time to think, even if we're not in his head, so that when the change does come, even if it's a scene or a day or two later, it makes sense because he has that natural processing time that most of us as humans need.
Mm-hmm.
I like that Sanderson does that. Yeah. He definitely gives people a long time to make small shifts, which is hard. Like Rich says, they can all be frustrating heroes, and I think that's partly why. It's because they're sort of realistic heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It makes them feel more real, definitely. That they would have the same struggles that we have. Yeah, 2 steps forward and 1 back. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which makes you wonder too. I mean, Kaladin went on a complete character arc to an extent for the story, but if you look at Stormlight Archive as a whole, like we're 10% in once all 10 books are out. So it's like, where the heck is he going now? Like, and of course, Chrissy and Michael know from the next 2 books, but like, there's still 7 books after that. Like, where is Sanderson taking these characters?
Well, I mean, I assume that a bunch of them have to die, right?
Oh, probably. Oh no. Let's ignore that for now. I don't want my babies to die.
Happy. Yeah.
Let's pretend they're all gonna live.
Yeah.
Let's just enjoy that the Bridgemen are surviving now for a minute.
Oh,
they're on patrol.
Yeah.
Ooh, Bridgeport.
Yeah,
All right,
that was another. Oh, sorry. That was another favorite moment for me, was the Bridgemen coming around Kaladin and being like, "That was awesome! Can you teach me how to absorb stormlight?" I thought that was so cute and just like so realistic to like what friends would do. Would just like kind of come around and be like, "Whoa, you're awesome!" You know, and like they really just kind of like validate him and like build him up. You know, so I just love them.
Yeah. On that note, it's so cool because it's like a heist team in a way, but it's not like Ocean's 11 where like each person has their job for like the actual like execution of the heist. You have like Rock, who's like, I'm not gonna fight, I'm just gonna cook. You have to deal with it. It's kind of, again, it's realistic as it can be for a fantasy world of people who could in no way be helpful in a real heist, but they still can help the morale.
Mm-hmm.
Sigzil is the weird ass name, right? Sigzil?
Yeah. I love Sigzil. He's probably my favorite.
Yeah,
he's the one that is
the world
trained
singer.
by Hoy.
He's the nerd.
Yeah.
The nerd.
Yeah. Although Lopin is hilarious. I love Lopin too.
Lopin's very funny.
Yep.
And Rock. I like them all, I guess. I just
all of
except for I'm sorry, Moash. I don't like Moash.
Yeah.
Did you guys catch that Moash is like the name of his editor or something like that? Sanderson's editor?
No.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's somewhere in the acknowledgments at the beginning. I'm pretty sure he named Moash off
Moshe is his editor.
Oh, maybe that's what it was.
Is his editor, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just
saying, really close.
Kind of similar.
Yeah.
Very similar. Yes, that is very similar. That's a good point. Oh, yes. Bridgeport is the underdog sports team story.
Yeah.
I always hear him
very
say
true.
I always hear Sanderson say that, but it's weird because I feel like with most sports team stories, there's not a huge moral dilemma. It's more of just a let's
Yeah.
win the game.
That's true. Ugh.
I maybe related. Anybody get chills when they read Ever or during this book or tears?
Yeah, both.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I got chills at the
Yeah.
end. Now I can't remember exactly where, but I think it might have been. I think it maybe was. Yeah, I think it was the epilogue, just the very end. And what's his name? Talon. You know,
Oh yeah,
that guy. He comes bursting in, and then he just says, "I have failed," and he just like dies or faints
Yeah,
or something.
it's like yeah, too late.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
and then the wit's last words about I fear you might be too late, my confused, unfortunate friend. That was just like such a cool moment.
Mm-hmm. Who else wanted to throw the book when you found out that the King of Carbranth was behind all the assassinations?
Oh yeah.
That's the thing that's not foreshadowed at all, man.
No, not at all.
Surprise. Yeah, total surprise. I was
He's just
floored.
so unassuming.
Yeah, you don't
And
suspect
wait
him
till
at
you
all.
find out more.
No.
Oh no. Oh,
Just wait. He is such an interesting character for creative people. I think you'll all be really interested by him as we go farther.
Well, he says at one point in a conversation with Yasna, I think, he basically says, like, I'm not that smart, guys. I mean, more kingly than that, but makes that illusion.
Yeah, well, he was another villain who we saw him validate his motives. Taravangian, I don't know if that's how you say his name, but we see him go, I'm killing these people for the greater good. You know, that's another one of those characters. And I'm a sucker for those characters, but yeah, I'm very interested to see what happens next.
Which that was a crazy part, Victoria, because like I think it was like maybe a third of the way through, I realized that all the bits right at the beginning of the chapters where the people were dying and they would give kind of their weird things that they say at the end. It always said like 1172, 1173, somewhere in those years. And I always said, oh, that's in the past. But then somewhere, some character or some map mentioned present time 1173. And I'm like, oh crap, this is going on right now. Where is this going on? And we better find out. It's like they're in like a freaking hospital room. Like, that's ridiculous. It was another Sanderlange.
Yeah, I found all those little prologues we get before the chapters with the one-liners or the two-liners with the people's dying words. It's such a mood setter, I feel like, before you get into the chapter. It's just so effective to set the tone because they're usually ominous or they're using words that we've heard but we don't know what they mean, like desolations and things like that. We have sort of an idea of what they are, but not really. So they're just such a neat tool to just set the tone for the chapter coming. And he does that in other books too. I think like almost everything else I've read so far, like Mistborn, he does that for sure.
Yeah,
There's always like a little prologue before.
Huge plot point in Mistborn, which is Michael's next book, I hear.
I know we keep talking about Mistborn. we got to tone it down.
Everyone's mean to me.
But yeah, I like the little prologue before the chapters.
All right, why don't we'll set up the next question, but if you have more favorite comments or anything that you enjoyed, we want to hear all about it. So let's do twists. We've already talked about this a little bit, but what twists surprised you and which didn't? Because I was talking to Amy and Tom, and they made some really astute predictions that turned out to be true. So I'm just really impressed by that.
What were their predictions? I think I missed it.
They said that Yasna was not using the Soulcaster. That was.
Oh, that's good.
I don't know if they said it was fake, but they didn't think that was giving her the power. Also, they predicted that Shallan and Yasna would be working together. They didn't think Shallan would be actually sent home. And then there was another one too that they made that was really that the Parshmen were Voidbringers. I was so impressed by that because that came totally out of the blue for me when I first read it. I had no idea.
Me too. I feel like I should have seen it, but it felt obvious when it was brought to light. But I was like, what? Oh yeah, okay. I'm down with that. That makes sense.
Sanderson's so good at the misdirection. He says, what about chasm fiends? What about these other creatures in dreams? He like pushes other characters' ideas towards you to make you think of something else entirely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Parshendy just makes so much sense now. I'm like, why didn't I see that?
yeah.
No, he's really good to me at totally fooling me. Same thing in Mistborn. Totally fooled everything. I never guess where he's going. Which is why, side rant. That's why I was disappointed by Starsight, because I guessed so many of the things. But with every other book I've ever read by Sanderson, he has me completely guessing. I can never figure it out.
Mm-hmm. I guess it helps to read 13 books before you publish. Sorry.
Sorry, what did you say?
I guess it helps when you write like 13 books before your first one's published. You get to work out all the kinks.
He's had some practice.
Yeah.
Yes. Very true.
Yeah, the Teravangian one, I've seen a few people now comment on. Yeah, that's a huge twist. Very out of the blue. What about...
Just layers them, one right after the other.
Yeah. The Sanderlanche.
Yeah.
Is the foreshadowing that you're talking about? I remember something being said about red and black or something, maybe in the epigraphs. I don't know.
I think that's probably what the reference is there.
Okay. I didn't notice that the first time.
Oh yeah, I never would have the first time.
You are smart.
Maybe that's why Sanderson makes his book so long. It's like, if I can make it 1,000 pages, I can put details wherever I want people to gloss over it.
I think that I said that in one of the videos. I was like, yeah, he's mastered the art of, I'm just going to tell you stuff and you'll forget.
Yeah, I think you did say that.
which the somebody mentioned it here. So I think that you can gather that Shallan killed her dad before the reveal happens. Like, I feel like that was foreshadowed heavily. Mm-hmm. Something that is never really discussed in this book, but I mentioned in my original reading review, was there's like 3 different passages where it seems pretty obvious Shallan has a shard blade, and no one knows why or how, and they don't address it at all.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that. You picked up on it. I think there's like 3 different sections where they pick up on it. And one of our first live streams, I think it was Ryan mentioned it, or maybe it was Victoria, talked about how she held her hand out and was waiting 10 heartbeats or something.
I think it was Kristen, actually.
Was it Kristen?
I think
Kristen,
so.
yeah.
Maybe. They mentioned, but like you picked it up one of the first times it happens. And like I said, there's multiple times where it happens. But one of my first things at the end of this book is like, how the heck did this person get a shard blade? She's so like naive and like kind of klutzy. Like, what in the world?
Well, and it's crazy because, like, I mean, you're right, Michael. So the Shallan's story really is foreshadowed because she, even in her internal monologue, she alludes to herself many times that she has a past and that she's done things. Mm-hmm. But you never really think it to the level that she admits at the very end.
Well, she mentions having used a weapon before, I think, is one of the other foreshadowing moments.
Oh, I missed
and you're like,
one.
she stabs somebody. I think it's like talked about there, but and Bedtime Bookward mentions there that it may not have been her father. I felt pretty confident assuming that was her father, so that wasn't surprising to me at that point. But it's still a big twist. Oh, and also, you know, all of the thing where she goes into like the bead world, and then Yasta pulls her back. You're like, what the heck just happened?
Does the bead world remind anyone of like that world that Eleven goes to in Stranger Things?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a little upside downy. I mean, she mentions the name Shadesmar, and if you look at that map in the book, it is a complete flip.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Sanderson creates experiences, not just books. And Tasha's
true
right now.
So true.
Yeah,
that's what I got addicted to right away with him.
Mm-hmm. I'll be honest, I haven't read a thing since finishing Way of Kings 12 days ago. Twilight.
Nothing else can compare.
Which I am going to finish Twilight, especially because Michael bought it for me. But like, I just keep thinking about that story. I'm like, it just takes a long time to process.
It's so good.
Yeah, it is one of those books that you finish and you want to read it again, but then you're like, wait, no, I have more in the series I need to get to. But I had the same experience. As soon as I finished it, I was like, I need to read it again and try to catch everything and then see all the things that I missed. I just wanted to get it even more solidified in my brain.
I'm kind of jealous of Michael and Christy because they're on their second or third reads now, and they get it.
Yeah, I wish I was there.
Slower. I know, right, Victoria?
As awesome as it is, I think so. I was in the same boat. I'm glad I'm not crazy for wanting to reread it as soon as we finished it. Leslie said the same thing, but I feel like rereading it after you read the other two would be even crazier because that's what I'm doing now, and I'm like, holy crap, this is so good, and you guys don't even know how good it is, and you may even forget how good
ignorant.
it is. By the time you get there, you may forget it because it's foreshadowed so well.
Yeah,
I'm sure it is.
Well, I read the first 23 chapters twice because I read the first 23 and then we announced a live stream, so I went back and read the first 23 chapters again, and even that, the foreshadowing in those first 23 chapters was insane.
Wow.
So you mentioned Leslie, and I'm curious. I want to hear Leslie's theories. If you're, I know Leslie's here. Drat, where is my theories one? There it is. Leslie, I want to, and everybody, I want to hear your theories about book 2 in particular. I want to hear what you think is going to be happening in the future.
I just want to know who
now that you've read
Odium
it
is.
twice.
What was that, Ryan?
Yeah.
I just want to know who Odium is.
Oh yeah, that's mysterious right now.
Yeah, like Syl has like a fit.
Who mentions Odium? I don't remember.
Well,
Cal
the
brings
scene
it
with
up somehow.
Dalinar
Oh,
is
okay.
talking to the Stormfather, I assume that's
Yeah.
who that is. And he's like, I'm dead now. Odium killed me.
Yeah,
That's pretty
Honor,
much all the
that's
info we get.
Okay.
Honor mentions Odium.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know who Odium is or
Yeah.
what Odium is.
And then in the High Storm, or when Kaladin thinks he's in the High Storm, he hears the word Odium and he asks or mentions it to Syl, and Syl like hisses and flies away.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right. I had forgotten that.
Man.
I'm bad at predictions. Also, I see some other people are saying that too. So I'm like, I'm afraid to predict because I know I'm just going to be terrible at it. I mean, I think Shallan must be a Radiant too. Is my only inclination really going forward. I'm like, Shallan is a Radiant. Kaladin is a Radiant, but also I have a lot of questions about what that means, and also like the history of the Radiants. We don't know a ton right now, so I'm I don't know, and that she has a shard blade somehow that was maybe taken from her father. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Ryan, do you have anything?
I mean, so many and so few at the same time. The only one that I feel like absolutely has to happen at some point is Kaladin and Szeth have to have an epic showdown.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have Zelenar, and now Kaladin is put in charge of defending him for all intents and purposes. So I'm just waiting for that epic battle to go down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we know that Szeth is going to come for Dalinar, but does he know who he's dealing with?
Right.
Dalinar seems like a pretty formidable foe.
Mm-hmm. I think Elokar is going to die, and Dalinar is going to take the throne.
That's a good prediction, I think.
Possibly killed by Szeth. I don't know.
Michael staring off into space.
Watching both of your faces.
I'm trying to think. Didn't Dalinar say something about making a promise to him that he could never take the throne?
I don't know. I
I don't remember.
I don't know where I
say
would have
something.
come up. I thought he said that.
But Dalinar is
promise
next
to
in line,
himself?
though.
Yeah, I thought he made a promise to himself, and I think he
did.
tells it to Navani.
Yeah,
But
he
if
did.
but if Elokar dies, just saying, like the line has to go one of two ways: Yasna or Dalinar, assuming that there aren't any other siblings. And I just don't see Yasna doing it. And I feel-
Elokar has a kid.
Does he?
Yeah, I think it's
Oh.
mentioned like once.
I
Does?
totally didn't catch that. I
He
know it's
does?
mentioned that he has a
Wow.
wife.
I think it's mentioned he has a kid.
Oh.
Leslie
I
says
totally
she
forgot
thinks Kaladin is gonna crush Zeth.
Yeah.
I would go with that prediction. That Kaladin and Zeth would have a showdown.
Zeth is pretty good though.
I know. He hasn't been
pretty
able to be
good.
stopped at this point.
He's mad. He's so mad that he can't be stopped.
Yeah. I think he's going to be stopped, and then Rock is going to cook him a nice meal, and then he'll just settle down. But no, predictions are so
Yasna
stinking
maybe a
hard.
radiant. I saw. Sorry.
Predictions are hard. If you don't want to talk about predictions, you can talk about whatever you want.
The
No,
thing
it's a
that,
great question, Christy.
The thing that I thought was interesting
It's just
was
fun
after
for us.
there's all the religious talk and the religious stuff, and Dalinar trying to like integrate religion into his life, and there's all this interesting stuff, and then the reveal at the end is like, hey, your god is dead, he was killed by something else, and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
what? That was a crazy moment for me.
That was for me too when I
so I
first
was
read
like,
the
that's-
book.
I was like, that's gonna change everything for book 2, right? Like especially because like Dalinar is trying to do this whole thing, like he's a very religious person. If your god is dead, what do you do?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind
Well,
of like
and
you're on your own now.
Yeah,
Hey,
well,
Angela.
where are the heralds and all this then? It's like, are
Hey,
they
Angela.
dead? Hey, Angela.
I don't if you actually look, and I don't know if this was understood by everybody, it was not understood by me. The dude that walks and falls down at the end of the book, that was the final herald.
Oh yeah, Talonol. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't
Right.
realize that when I first finished, and I was like, I went back and I was like, this has to have some level of importance. And I went back and read the first chapter. I'm like, oh, frick.
Yeah, no, the name Talonol's been burned into my mind ever since I did that first video that I completely don't disagree with anymore right at the beginning. So I'm like, this guy has to be some sort of villain or something. And I'm still not convinced that he's not. But yeah, he's important somehow, some way. That's my prediction. Talonol's important.
Each of the
There's a
Radiants
prediction.
has a Spren, and I haven't seen Dalinar, so I don't think he will be one. I think he's a misdirection. Oh, okay. Each of the Radiants have a Spren. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I guess what we understand is the creatures that Shallan has been seeing are a type of Spren, right? So maybe that's her Spren, kind of like what Syl is to Kaladin. Only
Well,
Shallan's are way creepier.
And Alucard can see the same ones too.
Oh. Yeah.
Right? Because it was in that. Didn't Alucard mention something like that in the scene where
Oh, yes.
Dalinar beats him up?
Yes, you're right.
He
Yes,
does
he
mention that.
does mention them. That he sees some like symbol heads or something. He said he refers to them.
Yeah. I don't know why, but those symbol head people remind me of the villainous creatures that what's his face is after in I don't remember the book, Name of the Wind.
I haven't read it.
I'm
Does
sorry.
anybody-
What did you say? I was reading the comments.
No worries. The symbol headed creatures, they keep reminding me of the creatures that, and I can't remember his name. In the protagonist of
Quoth?
Name of the Wind, Quoth, yeah, because he's after those weird creatures. And every time I think of the symbol head people, I think of those creatures for some reason.
Oh,
I'm
interesting.
not sure why.
I always picture those people as like super creepy fae.
Yeah.
Miss Richards Reed said Shallan's Spren remind her of the angels from Doctor Who. If we have any Doctor Who fans out there. Yeah, I can see
Hey.
that. I can see that definitely. They're kind of like in the background and always following her.
All right. I'm going to switch up the questions, but you guys can always answer your previous question and we'll be happy to talk about it. So, what main or side characters really stood out to you in this section and why? And I would love to hear about, like, I have some questions later about some of the main ones, but like, Elokar and Sadeas. We talked about Sadeas a little bit, but I'm just really curious about some of the side characters here. But you can talk about whoever you want.
Can't remember side characters we haven't talked about yet. There's so many characters in this book.
There's a lot.
Capsule. What about Capsule?
Rip.
I feel like Capsule was there to serve a purpose, and then we just like don't worry about him anymore.
Yeah.
But he did kind of introduce us to Ghost Bloods and that
Yeah.
organization. I think that kind of was maybe his purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Elokar,
Okay,
to
so-
me. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I would, yeah. Elokar makes a terrible king. Yeah, definitely. I feel like he's just a kid playing king. You know, he doesn't seem like he's really matured as a person and as a man yet. And he's just like, I'm the king, and he kind of just acts maybe selfishly. And I don't know. What were you gonna say, Michael?
I was asking if everybody hates Elokar.
I don't.
I felt bad
Right.
for him. I think that he's
kind of.
okay. Like imagine you're like this like super powerful forces like rich son, and then all of a sudden you're king. Like, is he a good king? No. But also, can you expect him to be a good king right away? Like, I feel bad for him, and I also don't necessarily feel bad like when Dalinar tells him to like shape up because he needs to. But at the same time, I don't think he's like this irredeemable person. He was someone that I very much wanted to see grow into his role.
Mm-hmm.
And he will. I don't know.
It says that he has like, doesn't he say like he holds a feast every single day or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Which part of me thinks is
it's-
dumb and part of me totally respects. Like, that just sounds
He's a little
awesome in a
extravagant.
very lazy way.
Yeah, somebody mentioned Adolin being the frat boy, but you know, Elokar is the one throwing the parties every night.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
older. That's what gets me about Elokar is he's not like a kid. Isn't he like in his 30s?
Early 30s, I think.
Early 30s?
Older than
like,
me.
That's not young. But he's
Okay,
just
I
clearly not cut out to be a
pictured him as a
king.
kid.
Well, but I
I
think
guess I'm wrong.
I know. He acts like it.
it's almost like the biological thing of like you mature to the level that like your so like rabbits mature really fast because they die really fast and they get killed by everything, but humans mature slow because we don't get, we're the top of the food chain. So like Elokar's a rich kid who grew up in a king's house. Kaladin is 19 years old, but he's seen all the crap in the entire world. So like it's very different.
Yeah, life experience. Definitely different.
Yeah.
Makes you grow up.
I think this is a really good point from Graf. Like, I think a lot of kings are kind of like Elokar. In the past, if you look at the history, they just don't. It's like the guy in The Way of Kings said. I forget what his name is, the guy who supposedly wrote The Way of Kings. He's like, I don't have any experience except sitting on my cushioned throne, and I don't remember what else, but it was like no experience. So that's why he wants to go walk the world.
Well, and if even we look at it, historically, like you were saying, Christy, and even just looking at the Old Testament, it's the kingdom of Judah only had a very few good kings, and I'm pretty sure all of them, except for maybe one, all had evil sons.
Yes, that's so true.
Like it's hard for a child to really follow in the greatness of their father. A lot of times, that's shown throughout history, and even Dalinar. I don't think he says this to Elokar, but he thinks it, or maybe says it to Adolin. It's, people accepted Gavilar as the king because he united them. And if the kingdom can stay unified in generations in the future, it'll be because there's a legacy then. But it's the second generation of kings of this unified country now that really will determine the future of it, to see if that first kind of Gavilar's kingdom was a fad. And if it's not, if he can hold the kingdoms together, then it'll turn into legacy.
Okay.
Power black holes are always extremely fun to follow, I think.
Yeah. Let's see here. I love Navani too. I think she's my favorite female character.
Really? Okay, so maybe unpopular opinion. but I don't like Navani.
Oh, what?
What? Why?
I just felt like I didn't like how she just like pushed herself on Dalinar and was like very forceful on him. I was like, oh my gosh, leave poor Dalinar alone. Like, this is so embarrassed. I was like embarrassed for poor Dalinar.
It is a little. She's a little forward. We'll say.
Yeah, I liked her more as
think
it
it's
went.
great.
He does. He still does the first kiss. Like it was.
Yeah, he does. He does. Right.
It was like the kind of forward that's a little pushy, but she doesn't do anything like creepy or weird before he reciprocates.
Yeah. I don't know. I was kind of like iffy of her at first. I liked her as she went, and at the end, and she kind of like stands up to Sadeas too, and like she like really cares, and she does the like justice prayer, or wait, yeah, she does like the
good
prayer on the ground or whatever. And I was like, okay, I think Navani is an actually good character, but for most of the book, I was like, I don't like this lady.
when she.
Oh my gosh, there's so much Navani hate in the comments. Like, where is this coming from? Everybody loves Yasna, but they hate Navani. What's
Everybody loves Yasna. That's the like most popular female character, I think.
I can't stand
I don't get
Yasna.
Really?
Oh, that's crazy
Oh,
too.
that's interesting, Ryan.
What did Ryan say?
He said he can't stand Yasna.
She's just grumpy.
She is grumpy.
I just don't like grumpy characters. You guys know that by now.
I think Yasna is really interesting, and I disagree with her a lot, but I still think she's really interesting because she has very good vision of things. She just sees through lies. I don't know how to describe it, but she's very good.
Yeah, intellectually as a character, I think she's fantastic. It's just she just has a poor attitude about everything. I
really like the. Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just gonna say I really like that Navani is kind of emotional, like in comparison to Yasna, because Yasna doesn't. Either she has a very tight rein on her emotions, or she just doesn't really feel emotions very strongly. And I just really like that Navani is emotional, but she also has some clear vision, I think, and I think that she understands Dalinar really well, and they're a great match. I feel like he really needs her to help him loosen up a little bit. And I love his self-control, but yeah.
I can see that, yeah. She grew on me as we went.
Is it Navani? Is that how we pronounce it? I can never figure out how to pronounce her name. Navani.
Yeah,
I did like
Navani.
her quasi-romance with Dalinar because for me it replaced a lot of YA books where it's just a stupid teenage romance, and I was really happy the Way of Kings didn't have that, and this was way better in my opinion.
It's kind of nice to have older people be in love, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It doesn't have to always be the young people
It's
in
like
love.
Aragorn and Arwen, guys. He's like 78 or something.
89, yeah.
87,
Yes, 87, something like that. Yeah, that's
More
true.
Yasna love. Sorry.
So, it's only alluded to. So I'm doing a lot of speculating, and this is speculating. I think that you might be able to potentially draw some foreshadowing from Yasna's seeming lack of like normal emotionality, and the fact that in the chapter where she's talking about the philosophical lesson with Shallan, I'm getting heavy foreshadowing vibes that she has some serious trauma in her past.
I got that too.
Yeah. That's probably true.
Which I think maybe draws some of that away from like her just being a jerk. Though I don't know, because like it's all speculation at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I never felt like she was a jerk. I just felt like she was hard to read. Like she's just kind of like she has a wall up at this point.
Yeah.
I thought it was she was so kind to Taravangian and about Taravangian that really made me like her a lot more. But at the same time, I couldn't believe that she was so fooled by him. Like, because she normally sees through everything, but Taravangian totally fooled her.
Yeah, maybe that shows just how tricky he is, that he can fool a person like Yasna too.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh,
I do like how
Yasna
like chastises Shallan. It's like you just threw it all away. Like I know that was so heart-wrenching for Shallan, but it was fun seeing that scene, and then we had to wait like, I don't know, 100 pages, 150 pages where we found out how that I guess, character arc for both of them wrapped up in this story. And the fact that Shallan really became more interesting to her once Yasna found out that she was kind of special in a way. And she really became intellectually interesting for Yasna.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people on this comment have been really identifying with Yasna as an atheist character, and that not being represented very much in literature. I can definitely see she is very easy to identify with. I think because she questions and because she doesn't accept things at face value. I think a lot of people are really identifying with her.
They refer to her as an atheist in the story, but she strikes me as way more agnostic in most ways.
Yeah, me too.
Practically speaking.
I don't think she would be against a god, but she would have to be convinced he was real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She strikes me as extremely agnostic.
And here's the other thing. I don't think that's true that there aren't a lot of atheists in fiction. Maybe this is maybe I don't know. I've read a lot of books with atheists, particularly contemporary fiction. I think in fantasy there's a lot more people who are believers because of the time period that fantasy is often inhabiting. But like I see way more atheists in fiction usually than I see like believers who are represented well. So I always am like, wow, I love how he has these really complex and flawed faith characters. But he also has Yasna, who is, I think, a fantastic representation of agnostic or atheist.
I think it's an interesting concept because I think it allows him to, as a religious person himself, explore realistic doubts and struggles within with a character in his story from a place that he's probably had to deal through these issues himself as a religious person. And so I think that's why it comes across as feeling both his religious people who are struggling and his, atheistic agnostic person who are struggling. It feels very genuine. It feels a lot more thought out than your typical religious or non-religious characters.
Yeah, it goes just to the depth of all of his characters, really, and that we see so much internal struggle, definitely on all spectrums. I think everybody can find someone to identify with in his books.
Yeah, especially in Way of Kings, for sure. You definitely have. I liked what you said, Victoria's spectrum. The whole spectrum is kind of represented there, from Dalinar to Kaladin to Yasna, and so many other characters in between. Everyone believes something in a way, and each thing is usually very different.
And that's such a good point. That's what I keep talking about with how Brandon is so good at representing all sides of an issue, of a controversy. Like, all the characters have different values. Like, everybody is so different, and there's representation of like anything you can imagine, like across any spectrum, not just religious to atheism. Like, any spectrum you can think of, he's got characters on it.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and now I don't think this is a Mistborn spoiler, but religion has a massive part to play in Mistborn too.
It does.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's just a Sanderson staple then.
Yeah, I would say so.
All right, let's
real quick
bring up
about
the next
Yasna.
question.
We've talked before about almost every story in a way. Every author mostly will include someone who's like a lover of books somewhere. And I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, but I feel like Yasna and Shallan to an extent are like, that's the quintessential, the library lover in The Way of Kings.
Yes,
definitely.
There's a nice library in Kharbranth.
Yeah.
I know. I want to go to these libraries. Can they just become real?
Yes.
Just want to visit them.
I swear, if I ever write a book, like a fiction book, I'm going to create, and I love libraries, so don't take this the wrong way, but I'm going to create an awful character who's a librarian just because no one's done that in a while.
Make someone that like freaking loves to read, and he's a huge like bookish person, and he's just nasty. He's a horrible.
Yeah. Gonna happen.
Okay, I want to talk about Adolin.
I love that you gave Adolin his own topic.
I know. He has his own question.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like there's so much to discuss here. So let me just talk for a minute about him, and then I want to hear everybody's reactions. I think he's very friendly and sweet, and he has a huge personality, like probably one of the biggest personalities in this book. He loves fashion, he loves girls, he loves people. I don't know. He's a fan, and he's really sweet. And that was weird. Anyways, I feel like he feels really real, and but at the same time, when I first read this book, I remember feeling like he was kind of a distraction, like from the real plot, and I just wasn't very interested by him. And it took me a long time to figure out why that was. And I think it's because, hot take, his POV sections are basically always about his father and developing his father better. Like, he does have a small character arc, but he doesn't really do anything in the plot. To me, like, I don't see a plot purpose for Adolin. He's basically a prop to fill out his father's character better. So, unless you guys can think of something concrete he does in the plot, what do you guys think of Adolin and about that? Because it was hard for me to really care about him when I first read it.
I think we mentioned maybe in a previous live stream, hey Kristen, that Adolin actually was written like directly to be like in the original version of The Way of Kings. Adolin didn't have as much to do with it, and Dalinar was actually doing a lot more of the questioning of himself that Adolin is doing in this book. So when he rewrote it, Adolin specifically was a lot. He just had to do with his dad because that was the function of that section. So I think we did talk about that before. I thought Adolin was like awesome from the beginning. I understand that he has the flaws of like, obviously he does some things that are immature. He's a little brash. He's like a little bit of a womanizer, but like even this is my hottest take, and I feel like people get mad at me when I say this. His like womanizing is not really that crazy. He like talks to girls for a couple days, and then he gets bored and talks to different girls. Like, is that good? No, it's not the best, but it's not what we think of today with just like a traditional dude just, you know, freaking buzzing through people on Tinder. Like, it's not the same thing. He's a very, very light womanizer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love him because I actually really, really like his character, even though he doesn't have a lot to do and he is more of a device. But he loves his father, and he loves his father to death. And he is one of the main reasons why Dalinar makes some of the decisions that he does, or at least considers the things that he does, because Adolin really does care about his father. And that spoke a lot to me.
Yeah, I feel like I liked Adolin actually by the end. At the beginning, I didn't really care about him that much and kind of barely noticed him. But towards the end, I was like, this was cool to see Adolin as sort of a character who kind of embodies like the Alethi young man stereotype a little bit. Like, and he really wants to be part of his culture, and he wants to be included in his culture, and kind of to see him go from just kind of being more concerned about external things to really like understanding his father and seeing where he's coming from. And he definitely changes his ideals and opinions by the end. So I liked that about I'm sorry, Adolin. I almost called him Dalinar. I liked his growth for sure.
Yes. I do. Yeah, I think you're right. And I like that he helped his father feel less guilty about being totally tricked by Sadeas. I really love that moment. That was I loved that one moment so much.
When they're fighting side by side, he's just so good. Like, when it gets made into a movie, that's gonna be one of the highlights. You should find that line that you love that was funny in that scene. Kristen had a part. She's like,
it was so minor.
But she's like, oh, this is a hilarious line. I wonder if you'll pick out the same thing. And I did. It was during the retreat, right around that same time that you guys were just mentioning.
Kaladin started ordering people around.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. And he's talking to a soldier, and he's like, who's your commander? He's dead. He's dead. Everyone's dead. He's like, okay, you're being promoted. Go do this. And he's like, can you do that? I don't know. It just
Yeah, when Calvin starts
Because-
promoting people.
well, because it's, I'm one of those people that I hear dialogue in my head, like I imagine them to speak it. So in my head, it sounded funny, so I laughed. And
Yeah, that is kind of a funny
Yeah.
moment.
But it's funny because with 200 pages left, Kristen's like, I wonder if you'll think the same spot is funny. And I got to that point and I looked up, I'm like, Kristen, is this the part you were talking about? And she's like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great moment.
That is a great moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
with-
mostly people really like Adolin, it looks like.
Yeah. I will say for him, I remember the very first chapter that he shows up, or at least it's his first POV chapter. And I don't know what it was. I mean, it's been a while, but something about just his first POV, I liked him instantly. I don't know, something about, he seemed like he had a good character, even if he has some flaws.
Here's why he's not a whiny teenager.
I like that he's genuine. Like, he does feel genuine from the
Yeah.
beginning. Like, I think he just is who he is. And I don't think he puts up a front. Like, I think he just is the way he is. A good-natured frat boy. There we go.
And I
So I
will
guess
say,
it-
Michael, I actually agree with you about that. He's not really that bad. Like the stuff he does. Well, and I have to say, if you really focus on the descriptions of the girls he's hanging out with, like they're not that great. I mean, like I can imagine why I don't think he's picking. I think his main flaw is not picking a good companion, and that's why he gets bored. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I agree with you, Michael.
Yeah, he's definitely, I think he's very, very likable, and he's very much just a young man who's, as somebody said, he's like the shadow of a great man, and I think that's a great way to put it.
He has potential. He has a lot
has
of potential.
I just wish he had more of a plot purpose. That was my gripe.
I see. Yeah, I could see that.
Mhm.
Wow, so many comments on Adolin. Thank you guys. That was a great response. Wow.
It is hard for every character to have a character journey, though, and even in such a long book.
So we already kind of talked about Dalinar, but if you have any extra thoughts on Dalinar, I'd love to hear it. Because he's definitely one of my top two.
Who's your other one, Christy? Is it Kaladin?
Kaladin. Yep.
It's interesting. I didn't like Dalinar's point of view as much in the earlier stages because I often was more drawn to Kaladin and Shallan and what was going on. Like there's just a little bit more intrigue there at the beginning. And then Dalinar's, by the end, I liked him the best. I think his development was really standout. And I still love Kaladin too, but I think initially I didn't have as much fun reading Dalinar. I think also because it was very like political too, and there was a lot of like just learning about the kingdom and the different conflicts. And sometimes I don't always love the political parts of books as much, but it was all important stuff to know though. Like it was really important scenes. It just like from an enjoyment perspective, I wasn't enjoying Dalinar as much at the beginning until like we get to the end, and now I'm like Dalinar heart.
And it's funny, Victoria, because like I was the exact opposite. Like I kind of liked Shallan and Kaladin at the beginning, but I didn't really buy into them until much later on. And Dalinar was the first time like, yes, like I freaking love this story.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, Reader Reborn, you're cracking me up.
That's great.
That's great. Oh, too funny. Yeah. And Dalinar is also, and I think I've said this in almost every live stream so far, but it's fun because most of the time you see these fantasy stories and it's the poor farm boy moving into his destiny. That's a little bit more of Kaladin's story, and it's just so much fun seeing a seasoned character, a seasoned warrior and leader like Dalinar having to take a new journey after he's already gone through a major portion of his life, and that's just so rare for traditional fantasy stories.
Definitely. Kaladin and Dalinar. Yeah, those are my top two also. Yeah, for sure. I really liked Shallan at the beginning, and now I'm like, Shallan is so sketchy. I do not know if I can trust her whatsoever. I do not know about her. She's on my list to watch. List of characters to watch. But I know we're gonna learn a lot more in the next book, so maybe I'll love her again.
Hey, Chrissy, is it okay if we ask, since Kristen came in late, if we ask her hot take on Yasna?
Oh yes, absolutely.
We all give our opinions on Yasna, whether we like her or no, and thoughts. What are your thoughts?
Oh man. I mean, I like her. I don't not like her.
Way to put her on the spot, Ryan.
I know, right? I didn't study for this.
Way to come in late.
Well, no, I'm just late. I didn't prepare.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know.
Did you have
I mean,
any?
even if I don't
any...
agree with, I guess I will say this. Even if I don't agree with everything she like thinks or does, it doesn't necessarily make me like her less. Like,
Yeah,
I'm more inclined to like her as a character. I guess more just like respect her as a character, even if I don't agree with everything, because she's very she maintains her integrity based on whatever it is she, her philosophy of life.
In some of our conversations earlier this week, you mentioned that you think she'd be fun to play in a movie, right?
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. I have a yes.
She has like Mary Poppins vibes almost.
Very
Kinda.
interesting Mary Poppins
Yeah.
for sure.
She does. It's her
Mary
pragmatism.
Yeah, Mary Poppins is so like straightforward. She's not as fun. She's not as fun as the things that she does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, imagine that alternate universe. Yasna and Mary Poppins switch spots for a day.
Oh,
You
man.
get those kids burning stuff in the street.
Shallan and Yasna have my favorite relationship in the book. Yeah, definitely.
Same here.
I was really glad to see them come back together because I was a little bit sad when they had a falling out, and I was like, oh no, Shallan ruined it. I was like,
Oh yeah.
really glad to see them reconcile because I thought that was also a mature thing for Yasna to do, to be like, okay, this young whippersnapper, like I can forgive her because she's just acting stupid and I got to help her. Like I thought that was very like mature of Yasna to kind of say, okay, water under the bridge.
Yeah.
I'll kind of forgive you, but I'm not going to forget what you did, but I'm going to kind of forgive you.
Yeah.
And
Once you can see
on.
her value at this point too, and see, you're going to be able to help me on this journey to figure out what this world's even about.
Yeah. And I kind of felt like, that before they, I guess, kind of reconciled, to me it felt a little bit grudging because, I mean, Yasna was extremely angry about, what happened. But I kind of felt like, well, something has to happen because, like, Shallan's not going to really survive without her. Like, she needs her.
Yeah.
I'm like, if there isn't, if they don't somehow get, come back together, I'm like, Shallan's story is kind of like, I just didn't see where it could go if she didn't have Yasna to,
Yeah.
Mhm. That's a good
Definitely.
point. Did you predict that they would stay together, Kristen?
I don't know. Maybe subconsciously.
I think you read the book too
Yeah.
fast in your predictions.
Yeah.
Fast.
Yeah.
That's true.
But it definitely was like, I think I had just, it was more, I think, just of a feeling of like, she has to come back to her somehow, because I think it was just that it was like, I don't see how Shallan's story can continue
Yeah.
otherwise. So it was more of I think a wish than a prediction.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
And
All right.
and Rita
Let's
Reborn's
do-
comment too.
Wait,
what
what
is
are
it? That's a good one, Rita Reborn.
Wasn't your daddy? I don't get it. I'm sorry.
It's just making jokes about her killing her dad, which is dark, but it makes me laugh.
Okay.
That is dark. Oh man.
Sorry.
I'm a bad person.
No, that's funny.
All right. Now I want to hear some unpopular opinions. Something you didn't like, because I was talking to one of my friends who is here tonight. Hi, you know who you are probably. Who thinks that Sanderson's women are not realistic in a couple different ways. He thinks that if the women were really in power, there wouldn't be war. And what was the other thing? Also, that Yasna would have been so angry about Shallan stealing her stuff that it would have become a bigger deal. She would have gotten some kind of retribution, not just sent Shallan home. So I'm curious what you guys think about that. Do you think Sanderson writes good women? And also anything else that you didn't like about Way of Kings, unpopular opinions?
Well,
Do you guys have any?
my first thought is I guess I never really imagined the women to actually have that much power. Like
Okay.
the women aren't the kings and the princes. I mean, they do hold a different position than our culture does. But in that they tend to have education, certain types of education that men don't. But I guess to me, they don't like the actual real power, like the high seats of power. They don't. To me, that never struck me that they actually have the power that could prevent wars and stuff, because all the men are the one making the war decisions and all that. So I don't know. That's just my first instinct.
I didn't say that very well. Yeah, she doesn't think that they have power because and she thinks that if they did, there would be no war. So she doesn't think women have power at all.
Oh well.
She agrees with you.
Okay, yeah. I mean, she's probably right. If the women, if it were all queens and princesses instead of kings, and well, no, we wouldn't have wars. We would just have lots of parties where people gossiped about each other. That's what we would do.
And people would get mad with their husbands, and their husband would start wars.
No.
Right?
We would have lots of parties where certain people weren't invited. That's what would happen.
And then the wars would start because then they get invited to the party.
It'd be like Maleficent. You didn't invite me. I curse you.
I have not had any problem with Brandon Sanderson's portrayal of women, because I feel like we do get both realistic societies. I think Alethi is a very, like, we can see some parallels with Alethi culture and even modern day or like past cultures too. I think we have at least a model for it, that we can see ways in which the society is unjust, right? Is unjust, I should say. So we can see that there are ways that women are oppressed in the Alethi culture, absolutely, and there are things that women have to put up with in the Alethi culture that they shouldn't have to. Like the whole safe hand thing just feels really arbitrary and doesn't make a lot of sense. It's one of those just very realistic parameters on women that we have modern day examples of too. So I like seeing those parallels, and I do feel like we have such a wide variety of strong women examples in his books too that defy that. So yeah, I've not had a problem with the way he is writing women, but I do see how the society is definitely a patriarchal society that we're seeing in the Alethi culture, at least.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that Sanderson does, for pretty much all of his characters, even some of the side characters, what most people say that they want done, which is for male or female characters, or whatever the characters are, they just want them to be real. They want them to have strengths and weaknesses. They want them to have motivations that are not 100% always tied to another person. And I think that he, from what I've seen, does a very good job at doing that. He can, he instead of always focusing on the women characters are not just objects to to serve a story purpose. In fact, it seems like of all the characters we talked about, Adolin actually is maybe the closest that we have to that. Everybody else is just a real person, and I think that that is what most people desire when they're asking for better women to be written, or different characters of different minorities or whatever to be written, or different male characters writing female characters is always a hot topic. And I think that the thing that people ask for always the most is write them like real people. Don't write them like objects or story tools. Write them like real people. And I think that that's what he does really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there, Michael, with the motivations and desires, and that's really what makes characters believable in the end. Is we want to see why they're doing what they're doing. We want to see that they're going for something, and we want to see their choices align with those desires and what they're learning. And as long, I know it kind of simplified that, but as long as that is true, then we can be willing to buy into what the characters are doing. Even if we don't agree with what they're doing, we can say, okay, I would see why you made that choice.
Nicholas's comment there on the screen, I've seen that pop up a couple times recently. And while I don't necessarily see that myself, or like, I don't necessarily believe it myself, I definitely do see it, is what I meant. Like, while I that's not the vibe I get from it, I can totally see that being annoying, especially if you have not been able to sympathize with that type of thinking before, of like, I was the one in charge. I had the ability to change this, even though maybe you don't. Like, if you've never necessarily experienced those thoughts directly, I definitely understand how it can be extremely frustrating, because he does have a massive hero complex.
Mm-hmm. I think part of it is having the surgeon training too, when people's lives have been in his hands to an extent, literally his whole life, or at least his whole adolescence.
Yeah, I will say I can sympathize with that perspective that you posted, because I started to get a little annoyed with it, especially when it kind of in my head I'm like, dude, you're in war. Like, that's what happens. Like, it doesn't matter how good you are. It's like, that's what happens. Is it? I don't know. That's kind of, I think, where I started to get a little frustrated. And like, even especially the fact that while he considers himself a leader of his men, he doesn't actually have any power to say. I mean, we of course do find out that he does have something he can do, but until he knows that,
right,
it's like he's expecting. To me, it's like he's expecting him somehow for him to miraculously, I don't know, do stuff. And I'm like, he doesn't actually have the ability to do. Like, it's one thing for him to feel responsible for what happened, in Amarim's army. But it's another thing when you're on a bridge crew, you have no weapons, or, it's like you're not actually even a soldier. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I can sympathize with that. I started to get a little like, okay, dude, like, it's, mm-hmm. I kind of felt that way a little bit.
Someone made a comment recently, and I forget who it was. I just lost it. How Shallan was one of the main characters, and how she had a great journey, was really well written, and I agree with that. It's interesting that I recently did an analysis of all of Way of Kings, the chapters, to figure out could it be made into a movie, and Shallan is only in like 13 chapters of the entire book or something like that, and that's tiny compared to 75 chapters plus interludes plus prelude, prologue, epilogue, all that. But the fact that she had carried such a weighty part of the story, being in, reflectively so little, or comparatively so little, is I think indicative of how good Sanderson was at writing her story, and how good of a character she is. Not morally good, but how fun of a character she is to follow.
That's a good point. Yeah, she feels a little bit larger than life compared to like the 13 chapters. I didn't even realize that she was in there so infrequently. She feels much bigger than that.
Yeah. I might have. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna give the hottest take, probably. That like.
All right,
do it.
So I think that I've never seen this opinion before. I think the chapter where Kaladin watches Tien die is the like episode 1 of this story, where we don't need to see it. That chapter adds nothing new to the story. That Tien died. You've been told it like 8 different times. He doesn't die in a particularly interesting way. I feel like he dies in a way that like is kind of expected based on everything you know about the army at that point. You've already had the Amram reveal at that point. It's like, hey, we needed fodder. We sent him out and he died. like I didn't feel that much emotion even the first time I read it there, because you knew it was happening, and then it doesn't surprise you at all.
Michael, I was
think-
convinced he was still alive up until like maybe not right then, because I think a couple chapters before they said he was dead.
Okay.
But I was convinced that he was still alive.
I had that thought early on. Yeah. I think I can see where you're coming from, Michael. That I think it may have been a bit more effective to not give away his fate so early, and then hit us with the chapter. Because I will say, when I actually did read that moment, it did affect me emotionally. But
it happens for a lot.
That maybe it could have been a more effective reveal if they hadn't told us what had happened. More or less that what had happened.
It was poorly placed. You interrupted the biggest climactic battle in the story.
Mm-hmm.
You flashback to another battle. And I get that it kind of works for a story. And I've just gone through this movie analysis for this. And there's no way you could do that in a film version. You can't imagine like the battle of like the Black Gate and Return of the King, for those of you like Lord of the Rings, and like stop and like flashback to a character's journey like at the end of that. It's like, that's just like
you don't interrupt that.
Yeah, you don't interrupt that. I feel like, again, I'm not Sanderson. I can't write like Sanderson. I'll never pretend that I can. But if I was reworking the story, I would have taken that flashback and probably put it around the time right before that Kaladin goes and visits Hoyd Wit with the whole flute scene. Because you have, that's really Kaladin's break into Act 3, where he starts kind of really learning, which we talked about like an hour ago. But having some sort of deep reflection at that point may have triggered that kind of walk and meeting with Hoyd even a little bit deeper than it was. Just my opinion.
The placement could have a big deal to do with it. I mean, it is a critical scene because the words that he says, the "I will protect those who cannot protect themselves," is heavily influenced by that, and as well as every other instance of the times that he's not been able to protect people. Mm-hmm. It's just that, especially the second read, I found the flashbacks less interesting, short of the Amram stuff, because I thought that was crazy interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I a lot of people I've seen are extremely affected by the Tien chapter, and I could definitely understand why. But I didn't get it as much. Maybe it was because it was foreshadowed so many times, and maybe it would have been better placed differently, as you'd said.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will say for me that what I actually did I tell you how I reacted to that scene? I don't remember if I did or not. I thought maybe I just imagined it, but I think I may have actually cried a little bit.
Oh, you did,
but it wasn't.
Yeah.
But it wasn't when Tien actually died, because we already knew that. What affected me emotionally, and again, I'm probably just because I'm a sentimental person, was when it said he laid down next to him for like the whole night.
Yeah.
And it's just, to me, like picturing that's really what more got me than not so much the fact that he died, because you're right, Michael, we already knew that. It was Kaladin's reaction to it that I sympathize with.
Can I give a shameless plug, Christy, based off that?
Yeah.
So if my internet works and uploads correctly, tomorrow morning my video on how Wave Kings can be turned into a movie is coming out, and I do address that yen bit and how the movie could rectify it potentially.
Cool. All right.
Awesome. That's exciting.
Sweet.
It's
yeah.
Too long. It's 27 minutes long. So.
If you remind me, I will totally link that in the description of this video, so that anybody watching it later will be able to just click on it.
Cool.
So I just wanted to say briefly that the thing that really got me about that chapter with Tien was honestly just how easy it was for Tien to die. It took 2 seconds, and it was just like one slash. And I think that's really part of what Anderson was honing in on there. I think war, I've definitely, I think there's a lot of moments in this book where it hammers home that war's in general unjust. What Kaladin's doing is entirely to protect his own men. He doesn't pick up the spear just to go to war after he has seen that the wars are pointless, you know. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want to fight for the Light Eyes. He doesn't want to get a shard blade anymore. His whole purpose is to protect his men. And I think that moment where Tien is just cut down so heartlessly, and that's like shatters Kaladin's world. That's kind of what war does. And there's other moments that really hit that as well. I think like Hoyd talks about it somewhere. But anyway, I feel like I think that's a really anti-war moment. It's very thematic.
I agree.
Moment.
Yeah, it made me question what kind of a leader would put the weakest men at the front just to get them out of the way. You know, it made me question what kind of corruption is there. And it's definitely, I agree, Christy. I think that's definitely a big purpose of that scene, is to show the kind of futility of the war and what they're doing and the heartlessness. Definitely.
Yeah. And just how quickly a life can just be totally snuffed out.
It's really a reflection of what Kaladin becomes on Bridge 4 in a way.
Yes. Yeah. I wanted to talk about a little bit. Where was that on one of these questions? Oh, it's in moral debates. We'll just skip to that really quick. But if you have more on unpopular opinions, I would really love to hear more unpopular opinions. I think that would be really fun.
I guess it would help to know what the popular opinions are.
That was the beginning of the video.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what the popular ones
I have
are,
a very petty unpopular opinion.
What's that?
Ooh.
I think you could have saved half the book length by cutting out every single time that Sanderson says that the woman's hair was up in a complex weave or that the men's coats are buttoned down the side. Not every single, but like half the descriptions are that, it seemed to me.
That's funny.
Anyway, rant over.
Rant over.
Okay, I have a weird question. This is semi-related to that. Does anyone... this is just maybe me being just as petty. Does anyone ever care when it talks about the clothes that people are wearing?
Not
ever?
really, no.
Wait, what do you mean by care?
Adolin does.
Yeah, Adolin does. I almost always subconsciously skim over any clothing descriptions in
Or
any book.
hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or hair. Yeah, like when they talk about it seems like half the time they introduce like some random Alethi person, they're just describe like what color their hair is. Like, why do I need to know?
No, and that was one of my gripes about the first quarter of the book, is there was a lot of plot world building exposition, but there was just so much, stop and tell me what the characters look like. And at some point, I think I just started, like you guys said, just started glossing over it and just, I mean, not skimming, but just didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
I'm making some jokes. There's some jokes about Wheel of Time because it's very similar in a lot of the same ways, and also
Yes, it is.
your character has those weird quirks. Like they make the joke about the braids there. I was mostly kidding.
Yeah.
Kayla says that she likes the clothing descriptions. My wife enjoys that kind of thing when we're reading stuff. I subconsciously skim at this point, but I do not hold the same opinion about food descriptions. I could read food descriptions.
Yes, 1,000%.
Yeah, I don't mind
But
food ones.
on the flip side of that, because we all hope, at least I hope we all hope, that Way of Kings will be made into a cinematic or TV experience at some point. Those descriptions are going to be helpful because it'll help the production designers know how to make the characters look so that the audience is less mad.
I don't, as much as I love this book, I don't know if I would notice if they did the clothes wrong because I just skimmed that much.
But there are fans who would, though.
Yeah, they definitely.
The only times
Yes.
when I do care about the clothing is when the clothing description is used to show like difference of class or maybe even like difference of ideals. Like Dalinar is always wearing his like armor, and then I think in those cases those can be important descriptions. But
Right.
I agree. Sometimes it can be overkill depending on how you use it. But if it's used for like a purpose to show differences between people, there's also that scene where Adolin is sitting with his friends, and there's some comments about like how like ridiculously they're dressed, and so it kind of shows like their mentality, and that Adolin's noticing that about his friends, and kind of becoming aware of that too. So I think when it's used that way, it can be really effective to set the culture of the scene and like the culture of the characters and the tone.
I think that the hair actually has world building elements too, just because it can talk about mixed lineage versus, because like it talks about how people with the mixed lineage hair are treated differently than those with the straight black hair. So that's interesting too. I'm exaggerating a little bit for comedy, but yeah.
But it still adds length to an already long book.
All right. So, if you guys have any moral debates or controversies that you enjoyed in this book, I would love to hear about them. I really liked, this is something that Navani and Yasna share, is that tradition is not the same as doctrine. And Navani's like, I'm not going to hold myself back for fear of offending. And in fact, Navani values doctrine more than Yasna, because Yasna doesn't believe the doctrine is even true. But I really like those moments. And let's see. There's also the moment when I already talked about the moment when Kaladin, he has his shield and it attracts all the arrows when he, like, right before he says his second ideal and battles with that. I think that was like one of those anti-war moments that I was talking about. So those things really interested me. If you guys have anything like that you want to talk about, I'd love to hear about it in the comments.
I had
Or
a
anything
quote.
else.
Well, I had a moment. I actually opened to the page with Kaladin. In mine, it's page 982. But just Kaladin's general struggle with, do you slaughter people for like a greater purpose? You know, kind of like a similar thread that we see with other characters. But it's him and who's talking? Syl. He's talking to Syl, I think. It says, Teft said that the Radiants held to a standard. He said that by their rules, you shouldn't do terrible things to accomplish great things. Yet, what did I do today? Slaughter Parshendi in order to save Alethi. What of that? They aren't innocent, but neither are we. Not by a faint breeze or a storm wind. So just kind of seeing, like, he's struggling with the, I guess, hypocrisy of, like, everybody's killing each other because they think it's like the right thing to do, and it's just like bloodshed, you know. And Kaladin's been very much steeped in war his whole life, and his ideas of that have just changed a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that his experiences in war have made him more like his father, I think, because he only will fight to protect the bridgemen, and he only exchanges his shield for a spear when symbolically the shield is destroyed, and he has no option but to use the spear. I'm sure he could have picked up a shield if he wanted to, but I thought it was symbolic. So I think you're right. I think his opinion sort of changes about that.
Well, in Kaladin, in the chasm, when they're training, he's like afraid to really go full force in his training, just because he doesn't want to kind of get back into that mindset that he was when he was a soldier in Amaram's army. He'll, uses one to train, but not to really train himself, to train others. Yeah, and like you guys said, it's not until that moment where he is absolutely forced to, quote, save people, he picks up the spear again, which goes back to his argument with his father earlier on. It's like, well, can't a spear be used to save people?
Right. I love that quote, Leslie. That's such a good one.
Yeah.
That last battle scene has a lot of what I loved about the moral dimensions of this book. So much there.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Sadeas, I'm going to sacrifice Dalinar because it's going to bring us all together. That's a worldview.
Right?
Yeah.
I read
he's
an
another
opinion
one.
today that all of the characters are disgustingly good, even the ones like Sadeas, because they all have good intentions at heart. And I was like, I don't know. I definitely think that Sadeas is not disgustingly good. I think he thinks he is disgusting.
Yeah.
He thinks he is.
He thinks he's good, right? I think that's one of the interesting things, is he thinks he's doing the right thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really want to see his, assuming we get some of his backstory with Dalinar's and Oathbringer, I really want to see where he came from. If we get that. I don't know if we do.
Sadeas, I feel like, as much as he tries to justify his own self in his head, I still feel like he almost comes across to the reader as a mustache twirling villain.
A little bit. Yeah,
Like,
I agree.
Yeah.
I always use my favorite example of like a sympathetic villain is like Magneto from X-Men.
Yeah.
Like he's been through the crap, he saw it, and he kind of is becoming like the same thing that oppressed him. Like it's a very interesting character study.
Right.
Whereas I feel like Sadeas just kind of comes across as like, yeah, you think that's cool, but you're just bad.
I feel like the reason why we as the readers somewhat care about him is because we knew that him and Dalinar and Gavilar had like a really apparently strong friendship, and we want to know why that is, and that gives a little bit of trust in a way.
Yeah, I bought
And visions.
to his redemption arc, but when he turned, I mean, he gets 6,000 people killed, I think, in that betrayal.
Yeah.
and he was intending to get 8,000 people killed in that betrayal.
Yeah.
And lose 2 sets of shards. So
Yeah.
comes across as cold evil.
Well, and then just at the end too, when like Dalinar offers what, like double or quadruple the amount of money to buy Bridge 4, and he's like, no.
Yeah.
He's like, what the crap, dude?
Yeah. I think I feel like he just comes across as evil. Though I have seen a lot of people I had mentioned before that we talk about Dalinar's paradigm shift at the end is a little bit of him recognizing human nature's inability to just like change for better without major changes. I do feel like this book is a series of books where we do fall around a bunch of semi-goody two-shoes. I understand that criticism. At least I like that. I think that there's a lot of grimdark and a lot of like anti-heroes that exist. So I don't mind getting a Dalinar and a Kaladin.
Me neither.
Yeah.
And Shallan has some. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Shallan has some more dimension, I think, in that realm.
Yeah, for sure.
She's not a goody two shoes.
She's a little bit morally gray, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, I think you're right. It is kind of like that. But they specifically quoted Sadeas in that review as a despicably good character. It was like, what?
What
are you talking about?
Yeah, he thinks he's doing the right thing. I can agree with that, but it's not even like I feel like you always have these like hot takes that people make like video essays on YouTube. It'd be really hard, I think, to defend Sadeas. I mean, someone could, but I wouldn't buy it.
Yeah.
Now I want to try, but I don't believe it, so it would come across as totally fake.
Yeah.
But I do love how like there are so much moral. I guess. Sorry, we have a visitor.
Hi, visitor.
Hi.
There's so much moral ambiguity in the story, but it's not grimdark, and I really appreciate that. That you can have your cake and eat it too, in a way.
Sure.
You can have some actually fun characters. It's not all depressing, but still ask the hard questions.
You still kind of have a high King Peter in your story.
Yeah.
Rich, that's a really good point.
Zeph is extremely morally gray. Yeah, that's also.
Yeah. But you're rooting for him, though.
Everybody's pro.
At least I am.
Yeah.
You definitely are rooting for
that
Zeph.
for him.
Yeah.
That seems to be the most common thing that I would think should be controversial, but everyone I know is pro Zeph.
Isn't that weird?
Even
He
though
probably killed more people than
he
everybody
kills
else.
more people, I think, in the course of this book than maybe anyone else. Yeah,
But it's not his choice.
The battle where Dalinar has to save Sadeas, I think he kills a buttload of Parshendi.
He does. He really does.
Well, I assume Dalinar has
I
a
agree,
dark
dude.
history, too, and that he's killed a lot of people in his past.
Yeah, it alludes to that, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting point. Because right now we know about Dalinar's past, but we haven't seen it. Whereas we're seeing Sadeas' treachery right now in front of us. So.
Yeah. I mean, Michael, 2 weeks ago when you told us that Book 4's flashback is not Zeth, I was so disappointed because I thought it was.
I just want to know. I want to know what it is about Zeth that makes it. And maybe I missed it, but I just don't remember seeing it. But like, what happens if he doesn't follow orders Like why does he have to, because that's what puts him in this predicament, that you do feel sorry for him, but makes me wonder, like, why though?
Like, is it part of the magic system, or is it part of his religion, or both?
Like, is it something is it like because it's something he's personally decided to ascribe to, and that, well, because I've put my whatever faith or whatever in this, then therefore I can't go back on it, or will something terrible happen to him if he like refuses?
Yeah.
Or I'm interested. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we know that yet at this point. I don't, unless I missed it too.
I don't think we do.
Yeah. He's still very mysterious at this point.
Still such a fun. The scenes are so fun to read, and I hate it because there's a lot of killing, but just the surge bindings and all that is just, it's a riot.
So you're a fan of the action, Ryan?
I am a fan of the action. I will always point back to Michael's pointing out that it's kind of like Joyce and Gordon-Levitt in Inception in the hallway scene, and that was the perfect analogy for me. It's so fun.
What was?
Zeth, when he's running on the walls and doing all this crazy stuff at the beginning.
He is basically a Jedi.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of true.
So we're spreading like the Force then?
Metaphorically.
I don't know. Well, Zeth doesn't have that.
Interesting.
So this is totally random, but we have thunderstorms where we are right now, and I checked the weather app and it said thunderstorms, and my brain translated it as high storms.
That's great. High storm blowing in.
Yeah.
This is a random point that doesn't have anything to do with anything, but it's some justification for weird pronunciations. I was at the end of this book, I was trying to make sure we got it done. So I was switching back and forth between reading to Amanda and listening to the audiobook. And we got to hear the fact that Michael Kramer and Kate Redding don't even pronounce the characters' names the same.
Really?
Kate Redding reads Navani's chapter at the end, and she says Sadeas instead of Sadeas, which is what Ryan had said. There was some other weird pronunciation. She pronounced a couple different things fairly differently. There was also a funny, it was an error, but one of the points, Michael Kramer says Galavar instead of Gavilar. I was like, am I saying it wrong, or did he say it wrong? But then the next time.
That's great. Well, and I read somewhere some quote by Sanderson where he said he does not include pronunciation guides on purpose because he wants the audience to be able to just kind of read it and hear what they hear.
It is they hear.
Yeah, you mentioned that, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting to me to hear, because when I read it, I hear everything a certain way in my head, and it's really fascinating to come. Even like the very first live stream, where we started talking about characters, and like, who are they talking? What's that? Like, oh, they're just pronouncing it differently. So it's just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Sanderson really does love his fans, though, and not saying that like letting them pronounce however they want is like caring about them, but he really does care about them.
It's gracious. It's like a very gracious move.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't feel like Sanderson is really a prima donna author at all.
No, I don't get that impression either.
I mean, he's been doing writing excuses for 10 years. He puts it out for free. It's like putting out a weekly podcast on how to write for free for a decade. Like, that's just...
And his classes.
It's just a passion project.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Jake mentioned something that Una had mentioned for the Codex Cantina, which is that if you're reading a physical copy and listening to the audiobook or the ebook, they've done a lot of updates to the ebook version because there was a lot of typos or like weird grammar issues, which I noticed more as I was reading through them. They've updated the ebook because it's extremely easy and cost-effective to do that, but the book printings and the audiobook are different, so you will see weird, like, slight differences there.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess it is really easy to just update an ebook and just no one knows. Huh.
So if anybody has anything else they want to talk about that's like super exciting and that we haven't talked about yet, now is the time.
All of it is exciting.
I know so much.
It's just one of those fun things because, and again, I'm not shy about saying it. I didn't really like the first part of the book, but the ending was so good I don't care anymore. And it's you want beatings of books to be good to hook audiences, but it's just such a case study in the fact that if you have a good ending, the audience is totally willing to forgive other things that happened early on, as long as the story makes sense. It's like, for me, that scene, like I said earlier, with Dalinar and Kaladin, when trades the Shard Blade for the Bridgeman, it's like that was the epitome of the perfect scene.
Yeah.
And top 10 doesn't even do it justice, like top 2 or 3 in my book. And for me, that totally forgave like the issues at the beginning of the book that I had.
That's cool. That scene is probably my top. Yeah. But one of my other favorite scenes, it doesn't even, I guess, maybe seem as significant, maybe compared to that one. But I loved the scene with Kaladin and Wit. When Wit told the story with the flute and the fire, I just thought that was, I think because I was imagining it like as a cinematic piece in my head. I'm like, this would look so cool. Like,
which, based on that, Chris and I had a conversation so that if that scene made it into the movie, we were saying, would it be like a live action scene where that whole story that Wit tells, or would it be something more animated, like the tale of the brothers from Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows?
Oh, interesting. Huh. I love how that's done in Deathly Hallows. I know exactly what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I love how that's done. I think that would be a cool way to do it, personally.
I also want to hear the music whenever it's composed.
So Victoria, that's up to you. Movie soundtrack.
Oh yeah, shout out to Victoria, who actually created a song based on Kaladin and Syl's relationship, and it's my new favorite song. I'll link that in the description for you guys. I have a lot of things to link now, but it's so good. You really should check it out. Go check out Victoria's channel.
Oh, thank you.
That's really good.
And Elliot Brooks shouted it out.
Which is big.
Big.
That was very nice of her.
Yes.
Elliot Brooks and Victoria need to do the soundtrack. Miss Richards Reed said.
Elliot Brooks is a massive Adolin hater.
Oh, really?
She hates him. Elliot.
That's funny. I've avoided all of her Stormlight videos because I don't want to be spoiled.
Elliot Brooks and Victoria need to do the soundtrack, 100%. They already have a score people picked out.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of do, just for fun, want to do the scene with Wit and Kaladin, like write something for that scene, just because it's obviously like iconically a flute. And I'm like, oh, I could do that. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just playing with the idea. We'll see.
Okay, I had one more question for you guys, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for
Just
it.
because. So I'm really curious. So Brandon has talked in his podcast about how sometimes he will use fantasy and science fiction imagery in order to symbolize things in real life. And that's just a technique he uses in writing because it feels like people don't get as upset maybe if he has a message, if he kind of cloaks it in fantasy. Not that he's like trying to preach at anything, but a lot of writing, if it's good, has some kind of thought behind it that's kind of directing things. And I think he does for sure with that. But I'm curious if you guys think that there's any kind of, if you've detected any kind of social critiques or just moral statements, and if you think that maybe anybody is symbolic, like the Parshendi or the Bridgemen, like are there modern day Bridgemen in the world, in our society? That kind of stuff. I'm just curious if anybody has thoughts about that. I feel like he puts a lot of effort into moral arguments, which we've talked about, but also potentially the symbolic social critique that fantasy can be really good for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like Kaladin is probably the most obvious one with just his prejudices. and he's seen the world one way for so long, and he's seen people do awful things against him, and so he said, well, okay, that means every single people group, or every single person in this people group is like this, and that has to be that way. And just his whole journey to overcome that prejudice is, I mean, that's Calvin's journey in book 1, really, his main one anyway. And I mean, you see it all over the world nowadays, especially.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, Ryan. Like, and he's an interesting one because Kaladin, he's a Dark Eyes, but he was like in a high non, so he wasn't like the most oppressed Dark Eyes. He wasn't like a farmer. He was pretty privileged for a Dark Eyes until he became a slave for no good reason. First he became a soldier, then a slave, then a bridgeman, and it's just like he's all over the map as far as power dynamics. So he's an interesting character. He kind of to critique others.
I think it's interesting too how like with the light eyes and dark eyes thing, I think at one point we were introduced to when we were talking about the Way of Kings book, that the dark eyes and light eyes prejudice was like flipped, if I'm remembering correctly. And it used to be like there's a legend that the light eyes were actually oppressed and the dark eyes had the power. So I found it interesting that like over time, even the prejudice can flip.
Honor at the end of the book has dark eyes. Maybe I'm making that up. I don't think I am.
Kristen's doing the research.
For that.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'm making that up. Dang it, I'm having a fever dream again.
Are you talking about the shard bearer that bursts through the doors?
No.
No.
The final vision that Dalinar has.
Oh.
Where God says he's dead.
No, I think you're right.
Oh.
I gotta find that
And
too.
there are dark eyes in the past that have power
Yeah.
in Dalinar's visions. For sure.
I'm not sure what color eyes the dude that wrote The Way of Kings supposedly had. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Nohadon, is that his name?
Yes.
Yeah,
Nohadon.
no. But that's not what he... Well, is that what he calls him in the past, or does he go by something else? I can't remember.
And now it's all starting to run together.
I think he calls him something else in the past. His name is... He doesn't go by Nohadon or whatever he goes by, because he tries to call him that, and he thought it may be a title or something.
Leslie said yes, Nohadon was dark-eyed.
Okay. So there's something there.
Well, but so Nohadon was if dark-eyed. That doesn't necessarily mean Honor was dark-eyed. Or sorry, in the book he goes by. Well, I don't want to say anything because.
This is a good point. The dichotomy between people with power and people without power is a big thing in Mistborn too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's gonna be in chapter 75 somewhere. I've already made some comparisons there, but I think there's a lot of comparisons to the real world religions that we've seen take power.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a video on Vorinism too. So anybody who hasn't seen Michael's video on Vorinism, that's an interesting discussion as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely check it out.
I love that video. So great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually really curious. I can't really talk about this here because we haven't read through Oathbringer yet, but I don't remember what happens. In this book, Teft says his parents believed in Old Vorinism and the Radiance and the Way of Kings. So it was like, oh, there must be some overlap somewhere in there. So it can't be, Vorinism is all bad, but this current postmodern version is bad. So, but I don't remember what happens later. So I'm really curious what will pan out there.
It's interesting you mentioned that about the Teft scene, because he basically says, I wish I would have listened better as a child. And how many people, nowadays, I think any of us to an extent too, about certain things that I wish I would have done this much or listened more, paid attention or learned this. I hear it a lot with, people, I wish I would have learned how to play the piano or something. And, he, as Sanderson does, he takes a real world struggle and applies it to his characters in a way that makes it relatable.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Tef really stands out in the Bridgeman, I think, for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's the only one that has that background and is trying to remember it.
Yes.
I really hope we learn more about his background because it keeps getting teased.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to know more about him.
Mm-hmm.
I see Nicholas. I'm sorry if I said your name wrong. He has a really interesting comment about geographic inequality. I don't know if you can find that comment, Christy.
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's an interesting point.
Ooh, nice. You even used the tag. Thank you.
Nice.
Many rural areas are seen as irrelevant to the people in the heart of civilization. Yeah, I think we see that. We see that in Way of Kings too.
Very
I must have been
true.
projecting. I don't see that anywhere.
It is true though that somewhere it said that. I'm almost positive.
Yeah, I think.
But
Yeah, the
anyways.
last comment there. It has dark skin, white hair.
But that's,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we should just about be wrapping it up unless you guys think there's anything else we should touch on.
I feel like that we could just talk all night. There's so many little details that I know are worth discussing, but yeah, it's just
Yeah.
I'm really excited to go forward and put more pieces together. I feel like we still only have this much of a picture of the world, So I'm excited to learn more.
Scratch the surface.
Who is going to start Words of Radiance tonight?
Well,
I
At least the
Kristen's
first
like,
chapter.
I'm gonna finish it tonight.
would we? I think I estimated the Kristen Red Way of Kings in a total of 5 sittings.
Okay, I was guessing 3.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
3, 4. I think you're right. 5. It's probably 5. Yeah.
Sleep before read.
So great.
Yeah, that's
Before
that's
read.
probably a good policy there. Sleep before read.
Yeah, I haven't
wherever
heard
you
of
are, it might be pretty late. All right.
Shout out to Christy for organizing this.
Yeah, this was so fun. Thank you,
Thank you so much.
everybody. Thank you for coming. This is so much fun.
Such a great book.
Oh, I didn't look up what time or what the date and chapters would be. Let me look it up really quick so I can just tell you guys.
13?
I think the date is August 13th. I don't know the chapters.
Okay. So, yes, August 13th. Well done. And then we're reading through chapter 20. So, we will...
All right.
Yes, thank you, Leslie. You're
Oh,
awesome.
22. Thank you,
So-
Leslie.
Through 20... Wait. Oh, what did I
Oh, is it
say?
not 20?
I put
Is it-
chapter
is it
20.
20? Okay.
It is 20 in the
gotcha.
in Facebook. Okay. 20 I mean. Okay, cool. Okay, sweet. Well, we will see you guys on the 13th. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being here.
Yay!
Thank you, everyone.